From our Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I am Ahmed Ramadan. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani says he personally called President Donald Trump to oppose the capture of Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro. This and more on today's show. Venezuela's imprisoned President Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores appeared before a federal court in New York City on Monday. They have been charged with drug and weapons charges. This is after being flown to the United States following a violent U.S. military operation in the country's capital, Caracas, which killed at least 32 people. Protests over the weekend in Chicago, Dallas, New York, and other cities, as well as around the world, objected to the U.S. move. Demonstrators described it as the kidnapping of a head of state that violates international law, as well as another example of U.S. aggression and imperialism. Maduro was presented in handcuffs at the courthouse, surrounded by heavily armed officers. Television footage showed a tight security cordon as the motorcade arrived. The couple had earlier been transferred from the Metropolitan Detention Center. They traveled by helicopter and motorcade under escort by agents from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, or DEA. President Donald Trump says the United States now is running Venezuela and is in control of the country. Within 48 hours of ordering the arrest of Venezuela's president, Trump issued fresh warnings to other countries. He threatened Colombia with a similar fate, said Cuba was not worth invading, claiming it already was close to collapse, and repeated his threat that Greenland should come under American control. The U.S. action in Venezuela has triggered protests across the globe. Demonstrators gathered outside U.S. embassies in Brussels, Madrid, Ankara, Mexico City, Los Angeles, and other cities. Protesters chanted, "Hands off Venezuela," and accused Washington of violating international law. In Mexico City, protests erupted outside the U.S. embassy. Officials asked the staff to stay away. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said a military quarantine around Venezuela will continue. Texas Democratic Congressman Greg Casar urged Congress to block what he called another foreign policy disaster. Venezuela's acting president, Delcy Rodriguez, has called on the Trump administration to work with her government after a violent U.S. military raid over the weekend in the country's capital, Caracas. In a statement on Sunday, Rodriguez urged Washington to pursue an agenda of cooperation. She stressed respect for international law, calling for sovereign equality and non-interference. Rodriguez said Venezuela wants balanced relationships with the United States and the wider region. She added that peace and dialogue matter more than war. President Donald Trump responded by saying Rodriguez is cooperating, threatening that she could face consequences if she did not. Trump said Washington wants full access, including to Venezuela's oil sector. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani says he personally called President Donald Trump to oppose the U.S. operation that led to the capture of Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro over the weekend. Speaking at a press conference, Mamdani said he spoke directly with Trump to register firm opposition to a push for regime change. He said unilateral military action violates federal and international law and sets a dangerous precedent. Earlier, Mamdani posted on X describing the operation as an act of war. He said he was briefed on the overnight capture of Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores. The pair were flown out of Venezuela and faced federal charges in New York today. Mamdani warned the fallout will not stay overseas, noting that tens of thousands of Venezuelans live in New York City. The mayor said his priority is their safety and the safety of all New Yorkers. Speaking about NYC Mayor Zohran Mamdani, we have a special report about taking the oath on the Quran. Let's watch.
Zohran Mamdani was sworn in as mayor of New York while the city was bursting with fireworks and sounds of a happy new year. He placed his hand on 2 copies of the Quran being held by his wife, Ramadan. One copy of the Quran was from his grandfather. The other once belonged to Arturo Schomburg, the black writer and historian who dedicated his life to preserving erased histories. 2 copies of the Quran, 2 lineages, 1 oath. Taking oath on the Quran is not new in America. Muslims have been sworn into American public life before. Keith Ellison did it in Congress in 2007. He used a Quran once owned by Thomas Jefferson. Andre Carson came next, a congressman from Indiana. For his official oath, he used the House Rules and Manual, but later placed his hand on the Quran for a public ceremony. Ilhan Omar used her grandfather's Quran in 2019. Rashida Tlaib followed the same year, but Tlaib preferred Thomas Jefferson's copy of the Quran. Latifah Simon, the representative from California, took her ceremonial oath with both Quran and Bible. Different choices, same country, same constitution. And guess what? The Republic did not collapse. But every time, the same reaction follows. Outrage, suspicion, accusations of divided loyalty. In an Islamophobic America, the Muslim oath is never just an oath. It is framed as an attack on the American culture, a threat to the nation. Islamophobes say it undermines America's Judeo-Christian tradition. This Islamophobia, perhaps, was the reason that the very first Muslim congressman never publicly disclosed that he was a Muslim. Congressman Mervyn Dimely served from 1981 to 1993 as a representative from California. His last name, Dimely, he said, in fact, is Daim Ali. Zohran Mamdani, however, is a different type of politician. Instead of running away from his identity, he thoroughly embraces it. He doubles down on who he is. He chooses to use 2 copies of the Quran. With Attorney General Letitia James at midnight, the Quran copy of his grandfather and 1 from the collection of Arturo Schomburg. Then, as Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont administered the oath of office, Mamdani placed his hand again on 2 copies of the Quran. 1, a copy of the Quran from his grandmother, and the other from his grandfather.
Belgium-based human rights group the Hind Rajab Foundation, or HRF, has filed a new legal complaint in the Czech Republic against an Israeli soldier visiting Prague. HRF says the man, identified only as HM, served with Israel's Javari Brigade during the genocide in Gaza. The foundation accuses him of genocide, war crimes, and persecution of civilians. It says he is currently staying in Prague. The complaint was submitted to the Czech Supreme Public Prosecutor's Office. HRF says its investigation places the soldier in Gaza between December 2023 and November 2025. It links his unit to operations around Shifa Hospital, including the Israeli army's siege of civilians and medical staff. The foundation says the acts were part of a systematic campaign against Gaza's civilian population. This is the 3rd complaint filed by the group in the Czech Republic in 4 months. HRF says the cases test whether European states will enforce international law. Israel's military has previously warned soldiers against posting images from combat zones. HRF says it will continue filing cases wherever jurisdiction allows. The Hind Rajab Foundation pursues legal action against those responsible for Israel's crimes against humanity, war crimes, and human rights violations against Palestinians. It has so far filed 50 complaints against Israeli soldiers in some 15 countries. In another violation of the Israel-Hamas ceasefire that was announced on October 10, Israeli soldiers killed 3 Palestinians in southern Gaza. Medical sources say 1 Palestinian was killed when an Israeli drone opened fire northwest of Rafah. The area had been vacated under the ceasefire agreement. Israel's Navy also shot dead a Palestinian fisherman. Witnesses say gunshots were heard off the coast of Khan Yunis and Rafah. Israeli soldiers also killed a 15-year-old boy in the Jora al-Lut area south of Khan Yunis. That zone was also cleared under the truce. Israeli warplanes later struck areas north and west of Rafah. Israel demolished homes in eastern Khan Yunis. Artillery fire followed. The Palestinian Ministry of Health says Israel has killed hundreds since the ceasefire began, raising fears the truce is unraveling. Angelina Jolie visits Rafah, announces relief village for orphaned Palestinian children. Details coming up next. Welcome back. Hollywood star Angelina Jolie visited the Rafah border crossing last week to express solidarity with Palestinians and spotlight Gaza's humanitarian crisis. The Oscar-winning actress traveled to Egypt's Harish city and the Rafah crossing. She met aid workers, volunteers, and injured Palestinians being treated in local hospitals. Jolie has announced plans to establish a relief village for orphaned children in Gaza. The project aims to provide safe shelter, healthcare, education, and psychological support. She says the goal is to offer stability to children who have lost their families, noting that children are suffering the most in the ongoing crisis. Her visit comes amid growing international calls on Israel to ease restrictions on aid to Gaza. Jolie toured aid warehouses and coordination centers near the Rafah border, interacting with truck drivers and relief teams waiting to enter Gaza. Volunteers told her Israel has blocked thousands of aid trucks which remain stuck at Rafah. They warned that food, medicine, and fuel are not reaching families. Gaza is home to about 2.2 million people. Many face acute shortages despite the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas that was announced on October 10th. At least 10 people have died in India's so-called cleanest city after sewage contaminated the drinking water supply. More than 270 residents have been hospitalized in Indore in the central Indian state of Madhya Pradesh. The victims include a 5-month-old baby. Residents say they complained for months about foul-smelling tap water. Indore has topped India's cleanliness ranking for 8 straight years. Chief Minister Mohan Yadav said sewage entered the main water line, likely from a public toilet built over a pipeline without a septic tank. Public anger intensified after Madhya Pradesh Minister Kailash Vijay Varghese lost his temper with a reporter, questioning delays in compensation and the lack of clean water. He dismissed questions, used abusive language, and walked away as the reporter reminded him that 10 people had already died. Experts warned that rapid urban growth and weak testing increases the risk of deadly outbreaks across India. The Times of India reports that only 8% of water testing labs in India's capital, New Delhi, are accredited by the National Accreditation Board. Nationwide, just 59% of public labs meet accreditation standards. Pakistan says it has successfully tested an indigenously developed cruise missile, marking a major step in its defense capabilities. The military announced the Taimur weapon system was flight tested as part of ongoing efforts to strengthen national aerospace development. According to the military, the air-launched cruise missile can strike enemy land and sea targets with high precision. It has reported range of 600 kilometers and carries a conventional warhead. The missile is equipped with advanced navigation and guidance systems. It is designed to fly at very low altitudes, a feature meant to help it evade enemy air and missile defense systems. The military added the system enhances conventional deterrence and increases the operational flexibility of the Pakistan Air Force. It described the test as a key milestone in strengthening Pakistan's indigenous defense technology and weapons development program. At least 20 people have been killed in Iran during nationwide protests against soaring inflation and worsening economic conditions. The dead include one member of the security forces. The unrest has now entered its 10th consecutive day. The human rights activists' news agency says protests have spread to 222 locations in 78 cities. Demonstrations were reported in 26 provinces. At least 17 universities have joined the protest wave. Those killed include students, workers, and ordinary citizens aged between 16 and 45. Nearly 1,000 people have been arrested since the protests began. Mass detentions were reported in Yazd, Isfahan, Shiraz, Kermanshah, and Behbahan. Protesters cite inflation, falling purchasing power, job insecurity, and market instability. Iran's police chief, Ahmed Ramadan, said targeted arrests of protest leaders are underway. The death toll from a deadly market attack in Nigeria has risen to 50, according to local reports. The assault took place at the Kasuwan Daji market in Demo village in Niger State on Saturday. Armed gang members stormed the busy market in broad daylight. They opened fire on civilians without warning. Dozens of traders and shoppers were killed at the scene. Several others were abducted during the chaos. President Bola Tinubu strongly condemned the attack, ordering security forces to arrest those responsible. Tinubu said the attackers were testing the nation's resolve and would face severe consequences. Niger State has seen repeated attacks in recent weeks. Rural communities remain especially vulnerable to armed groups hiding in forested areas. Russia is planning to open its first Islamic bank in the current year. The plan was announced by Anatoly Aksakov, head of the State Duma Committee on the Financial Market. Speaking in Kazan, Aksakov said consultations are underway with Russian businesses, including those serving the country's Muslim population. He added that negotiations also are ongoing with Arab countries. Under the proposal, a partner subsidiary bank would be opened in the Middle East. Russia's central bank has given preliminary support to the idea. Officials say the move could give a strong boost to partnership financing. That market in Russia is estimated around 1 trillion rubles or nearly $13 billion. Islamic finance follows principles of Islamic law called Sharia in Arabic. It bans interest and excessive speculation. Transactions are tied to real assets and shared risk. Russia's Muslim population is estimated at approximately 20 million people, with several regions, including Tatarstan and the North Caucasus, having Muslim majorities. Scientists say cancer-fighting immune therapy could help aging intestines repair themselves. Researchers at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory in New York tested chimeric antigen receptor T-cell therapy on the gut. The treatment works by reprogramming a patient's own immune cells to recognize and destroy harmful or aging cells and was first developed to treat certain cancers. As people age, senescent cells build up in the intestine and refuse to die. These cells damage the intestinal lining, which is essential for digestion and nutrient absorption. Normally, the gut lining renews itself every few days, but with age or after cancer radiation, this process slows down or stops. Inflammation increases and food intolerance or leaky gut can develop. In tests on mice, the therapy cleared aging cells from the intestine. The gut healed faster, inflammation dropped, and nutrient absorption improved. The treatment also protected against radiation-related intestinal damage. A single dose showed benefits lasting up to a year. Early tests on human intestinal cells showed similar results. Researchers say human trials are still needed, but the findings point to new hope for older adults and cancer patients. That's all from our Toronto studios. Thank you for watching Muslim News. We are a community channel dedicated to bringing you stories you can trust. Please like, share, and subscribe to our content. You can also comment to let us know what you think of our coverage. You can donate now by visiting muslimnetwork.tv/donate. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV. Salam.